And here's the kicker. All this debt was about to blow up in Rome's face. As the Republic stumbled, the path to empire loomed. Julius Caesar's assassination marked a turning point. Augustus, his adopted son, emerged victorious and established the empire. You'd think this would bring stability, right? Wrong. The transition strained Rome's finances. Augustus faced a huge challenge, keeping the empire together and managing its finances. His solution? Massive military spending. But where would the money come from? He introduced new taxes and took out loans. Some historians say the imperial debt doubled, tripled, or even quadrupled during Augustus's reign. Under Augustus and his successors, the empire expanded, but at what cost? Exploiting provinces for resources and labor became the norm. Tax farming, where wealthy individuals were given the rights to collect taxes in a province, often resulted in exploitation. It was like giving a wolf to guard the sheep. The burden fell on the common folk, deepening resentment and rebellion. Imagine living under the rule of someone who is only interested in squeezing every last drop of profit from you. That was the reality for many in the Roman provinces. The emperors justified their actions by saying they were acting in the best interest of the empire. But were they really? Or were they just looking out for themselves and their own financial gain? Augustus also introduced a series of economic measures that, while intended to stabilize the empire's finances, ended up creating more problems. He standardized the currency, reformed the coinage, and established the ratio between silver and gold. While these measures brought some short-term stability, they also sowed the seeds of future inflation. As the empire grew, so did the demand for resources, especially precious metals. Augustus's policy of extracting more resources from the provinces led to exploitation and discontent. The gap between the rich and poor widened. The wealthy elite became fabulously rich, while many in the provinces lived in poverty. This stark contrast created tension and resentment, setting the stage for future conflicts. But that's not all. Augustus's rule also marked the beginning of currency debasement. To pay his debts, build infrastructure, and fund military campaigns, he reduced the silver content in coins, basically cheating everyone. People could carry around wheelbarrows of money for basic goods. Now, I'm sure you've heard of inflation, but in Rome, it was off the charts. People lost faith in the currency. Trade suffered, and daily life became a gamble. It was like playing a game of Monopoly gone wrong. But despite all this, Augustus was considered a successful ruler. He ushered in a period of peace and prosperity, which later became known as the Pax Romana. But beneath the surface, the empire was unraveling. Citizens and provinces alike were financially burdened, making them easier to control but fueling simmering resentment. Debt played a critical role in Rome's demise. It eroded trust, destabilized the economy, and weakened the empire from within. The final toll was devastating. Economic exploitation, unsustainable debt, and staggering wealth inequality left Rome vulnerable to outside invaders. The empire that once seemed invincible was crumbling from within. The irony is that Rome's greatest enemy turned out to be its own internal decay, driven by financial oppression, proving that sometimes the deadliest foes wear the same face as the empire. So what can we learn from Rome's missteps? How can we avoid falling into the same debt trap? And remember, history has a way of repeating itself. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe for more historical tales. Your support means the world to me. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning. Debt is the silent destroyer, the unseen chains that binds generations through economic suffering. But did you know that debt is also responsible for the fall of empires? Yeah, not just one, but two. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we'll explore how unchecked debt ensnared Rome and pushed it over the edge, demonstrating that the greatest threats don't always wear armor. It's me, here's my channel, and let's get started. The story of Rome is usually one of military triumphs, political intrigue, and larger-than-life characters like Julius Caesar and Augustus. But there's another side to this story, one written in numbers and cold hard facts. Let's start with some perspective. Imagine a world where everything you own could be taken from you because you couldn't pay back a loan. Sounds crazy, right? Well, that was everyday reality in the Roman Republic. Early Rome was an agricultural and trading-based economy. The currency, a unit called the sestertius, was backed by silver. This gave people confidence in its value and their ability to exchange it for goods and services. Small farmers were the backbone of Rome. They farmed the land, produced food and traded their surplus for things they needed. But this system had a fatal flaw. Farmers were constantly exposed to the whims of nature. A bad harvest could wipe out their profits. And when that happened, many turned to loans to stay afloat. But here's the catch. These loans often came with exorbitant interest rates. So if a farmer couldn't repay on time, his debt would pile up faster than a mountain. Eventually, if he couldn't pay, he might be enslaved, joining the ranks of debt bondage. Rome wasn't built in a day, nor was its staggering debt problem. The road to enslavement was paved with good intentions. Imagine being a small farmer caught in the grip of debt. You work tirelessly, but your earnings barely cover the interest, let alone the principal. Desperation sets in, and you have only one option left: join the army. Now, ancient Rome wasn't fond of taxation, preferring instead to use military conquest to expand its territory and wealth. In fact, for the first 400 years of the Republic, Rome didn't even have a professional standing army. Soldiers were citizens who got paid for their service. This made them feel like they were serving their country and their wallets. But the late Republic changed all that, sparking massive civil wars and plunging the state into turmoil. This led to a surge in military spending, much of it financed through loans. Now imagine being a soldier in this situation. You're fighting battles far from home, and the pay isn't great. But there's a glimmer of hope. A general offers you a deal. He promises to secure land and wealth for you if you stay loyal. What do? Do you stick with the struggling republic, or do you join the general? Many soldiers chose the latter, forming a strong bond with their generals. But this shift in loyalty had unintended consequences. The Senate, which was supposed to be the highest authority in Rome, suddenly found itself overshadowed by these powerful generals. As the republic grew, so did its population. More people meant more demand for housing, which pushed prices up. For small farmers, it was a losing battle. The wealthy elites were buying up land at auctions where debt-ridden farmers were forced to sell. So while some got richer, many more were falling into poverty. Cities became overcrowded slums with little access to basic services. This growing divide between the rich and poor shook the foundations of the Republic. It led to uprisings, political reforms, and populist movements. People were tired of being sidelined and wanted a piece of the action. This period also saw the rise of Marius and Sulla, two of Rome's most famous generals. Their rivalry pushed Rome to the brink. The wealthy elite, known as the Optimates, sided with Sulla, while the common folk supported Marius. When Sulla came out on top, he enacted harsh measures, killing or exiling his opponents and seizing their property. This left a deep scar on Rome's political landscape. But the story doesn't end there. We haven't even talked about the usurers, the moneylenders who charged exorbitant interest rates. In the late Republic, wealthy senators and equestrians dominated lending. They controlled the supply of currency and set the rules. Often they used their wealth and influence to manipulate laws in their favor, making it harder for the common folk to escape debt. Even worse, they took advantage of the widespread debt, slavery. Many people were so desperate they sold themselves or their children into slavery just to pay off debts. It was a sad reality of life in Rome. And now, let's add another layer to this complex web. Military campaigns became expensive, draining Rome's coffers to keep the war machine running. The Senate turned to wealthy landowners. These folks weren't interested in funding the military out of the goodness of their hearts. No, they had their own agendas. They wanted political power and control over Rome. They offered loans, but they came with strings attached, giving lenders more say in how Rome was run. It was a dangerous game. The Senate was giving away its power to the very people it needed to raise funds. This growing imbalance tipped the scales, setting the stage for Rome's downfall. By the late Republic, Rome's middle class had almost vanished. The wealthy elite and the impoverished masses were at opposite ends of the spectrum. In the center, there was no one to hold things together. This meant the Senate, once the heart of Rome's power, was losing its grip. Common folk felt left out, and the wealthy elite were focused on their own interests. The Republic was cracking under the pressure.